One. All right, today on the latest episode of The Big Show, October is upon us, and as the season welcomes fall, we have plenty to discuss. It's a big week for Marvel Studios with news of Wolverine's return to the MCU. Plus, 2 months before they begin production, Blade is looking for a new director. We'll also have Bros, Hocus Pocus, and Blind, which are all dropping in theaters today. CCA critic Jason Black will join us to discuss this week in film. We'll have all that and more on episode 509 of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. Somebody's getting a call.
That was me, sorry.
I thought we were having theme music. That was cool.
Right, I was like, man, that might get us tagged, man. We might
that was me.
on YouTube for that.
Sorry about that.
No, it's not a problem, man. So welcome to the show, man. Of course, you know, Wilson Morales, who normally joins us, we've replaced him with somebody Black, Jason Black. And,
Hey, I'll let you say it, Tim. I'm not saying it. I've learned my lesson.
You'll get a kick out of that for sure.
Yeah.
He's at the New York Film Fest this week, so I've graciously asked Jason, who I wanted to get on this show for a minute. Jason, welcome to our show, man.
Man, I appreciate it. I was looking at our text messages, and I think this is about 9 months in the making, almost a year. So yeah, we finally got to do it though.
Jason's getting blown up, man. I'm telling you. And it's funny because Wilson has this problem too. All of the publicists, nobody ever calls me or Charles. They don't care about us.
I wish I could say this was a publicist calling. It's just a friend that I don't know why he won't stop calling, but you know, whatever. It is what it is, I guess.
They heard that you were on the show and they just wanted to confirm.
Yeah. I think they're actually looking for Wilson.
All right, so a bunch of our colleagues, since we're all members of the Critics' Choice Association, we'll all be going up to New York this weekend for the White Noise Junket. Jason, I see you still here. I'm still here. Charles is still here because they've all left. What happened, man? Why did we get left behind?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I know you're such a busy man, you couldn't make it happen. Me, a little bit different story, but yeah, I mean, those types of trips, those types of junkets, I always try to make because you do get a lot of better insight on the movies and get to talk to the filmmakers and part of the crew. And it is fun for us all to see each other since we're all over the country. You know, we rarely get to actually interact outside of a potential Zoom where phone calls keep happening. So yeah, it just wasn't meant to be for me. You'd have to ask Netflix actually, but yeah, hopefully on the next one, I'll be able to attend.
Charles, I guess your schedule wouldn't allow you to attend either.
Well, yeah, you know, I've got this wonderful new job that I'm working, but I didn't even know that there was a junket. So, you know, at least you guys knew about it and could say no or be upset that you weren't invited. It didn't even register on my radar. So it is what it is.
Hey, stuff happens, man. Stuff happens. Well, we got a lot of stuff to discuss today, and hopefully Jason brought his movie watching to the show because I clearly did not. So
yeah,
we will soldier through the best we can. But I do want to start with the big news that came out of the MCU this weekend, and I'll specifically talk about Blade. You know, Marvel Cinematic Universe, which we all are intimately familiar with. We also know that the films and what they're doing on Disney Plus, those things all sort of kind of tie together. And we saw how disastrous it could be when we had the Black Widow situation during the pandemic after it got pushed back and then it finally was released and they had to reshoot some stuff that was at the end, some of the end credit scenes, because the movies and the television shows all sort of tie into this one universe. Excuse me. So if there's an issue or if something is delayed on the television or film front, it kind of dominoes with everything else that's happening. And I got a feeling, Jason, Charles will be back momentarily.
Yep.
That this is going to be an issue with Blade. They were set to go into production. They're in pre-production now. They were about to start shooting in 2 months. and they lose their director 2 months before, and now you're starting to hear rumblings that the script is bad. You know, they wanted it set as kind of an origin story in the 1920s. That part is being reported that that's not really working out well. This is going to be a problem because they've already announced it that it's supposed to be November of next year. Jason, what's your take on how is this going to be problematic, as they've already kind of given us the voice of Mahershala Ali at the end of the Eternals in a
Yes.
scene? How problematic will this be? And I'm sure at some point Kevin Feige and his team will have a workaround for this.
Yeah, well, first off, you mentioned how everything ties in, and you just mentioned the Eternals. I think we can all agree the best part of the Eternals was Mahershala Ali's voice at the very end with Blade. I mean, that was the coolest part of the whole movie.
Pretty much.
So first off, they can do a new script. They can get a new director. They better not recast Mahershala Ali. That's the only thing that I absolutely require, if they're asking me, moving forward, that they need to make this work. Now, you're right. They've had some issues with the MCU of timing, with COVID. I think Doctor Strange was supposed to come out before No Way Home, but Sony said, well, we don't care about your timeline. We're doing our own timeline. So they had to reshoot some things from there. So they are somewhat used to having to reconfigure this stuff in order for it to work within the timeline. Now, the other side of that argument is, all right, well, phase 4 hasn't exactly worked well, right? I mean, there's a pretty good argument for that if you don't have that plan mapped out like they had leading up to Endgame, then maybe this stuff doesn't deliver quite as well as they would like for it to. So my thought is probably that with Blade, with having to reconstruct the script and get a new director and those sorts of things, is it will probably be a little bit more standalone than maybe they had originally planned for. They'll have some sort of a tie-in, maybe it's a post-credit scene or something like that, which I'm actually not mad at. I don't really mind having more standalone films that are not beholden to this. We have to make sure it ties into all this other stuff within the MCU. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise. However, like I said, this latest phase has not been my favorite. So I hope that they can get it together and really deliver the kind of Blade movie that I think we all want to see.
Well, when you talk about this phase, I think you got to remember we're coming off of the conclusion of something that it took them 8 years to build.
For sure.
You know, this whole, kind of climax with Thanos. And then, of course, you also lost what I think are actually, you didn't lose all of them, but the core 6, man, all kind of went their separate ways. No more Robert Downey Jr. in the MCU. No more Chris Evans in the MCU. So you took a hit.
And Chadwick Boseman died.
Say it again.
And Chadwick Boseman died.
So, I mean, you took a hit. And I think part of what we're now seeing, and I think there have been some struggles. You've seen stuff like Moon Knight that sort of might not have worked. You've seen, of course, She-Hulk right now, where you have a lot of people who are kind of iffy with that one as well. So you went from a lot of established characters, Jason, to some characters that we now have to kind of sell to the public who aren't comic aficionados. So you're right. I mean, it has been a stumble, but despite that stumble, they're still cashing huge checks over at Marvel right now. These films are still grossing $1 billion. And even with this hiccup, I agree with you. I don't think that Mahershala Ali is going to be recast, but I think that they've got a schedule of how they wanted to kind of roll these characters out. And the fact that they're having difficulties with the screenplay and having difficulties finding someone to take the helm and direct is going to be problematic for the Blade story, because I think they anticipated having Blade in some of the other projects after they introduced him in phase 5. So we'll see. Charles, what are you thinking? Because I know you missed all of that. We were pretty much talking about, some of the problems that we've had in phase 5 after, the Thanos storylines finally wrapped up, the death of Chadwick Boseman, the loss of Robert Downey Jr., the loss of Chris Evans, and so many of the other really popular characters, Scarlett Johansson. It's tough, man. I mean, we spent so much time with those characters from 2008 to 2019. It's going to be hard because people had they've identified with those characters, kind of watched them through a series of movies. And you're right, Jason. It's going to be hard. This phase 5 is getting off to a bumpy start. And I assume that until you get either the Fantastic Four or the X-Men that come in, something that the audience is really familiar with, I think you're going to have a lot of these stumbles moving forward.
Well, as the universe gets bigger and bigger, and you put more people in, get more people involved, it gets harder to juggle so many balls. And so I anticipate that Disney is smart enough, Marvel is smart enough to have someone waiting in the wings. That I don't think that this is going to be but maybe a blip on their radar. They know that they have production deadlines and all those kinds of things, and so I don't think that they would not have prepared for have a contingency plan prepared as a good superhero would. So they'll probably just move on to the next plan and keep it going. So I mean, you even saw that they're redoing Armor Wars as instead of a TV show as a movie. So everything that nothing is concrete really until it happens. And so that gives them the flexibility to keep moving, but they got to stay on top of their toes.
All right, so we talk about kind of a downside to the MCU. Let's talk about the other news this weekend, which kind of took people by surprise, that we saw this video of Ryan Reynolds sitting on a couch discussing Deadpool 3, and all of a sudden Hugh Jackman walks by and he goes, "Hey Hugh, you want to do it? You want to be Wolverine in the next Deadpool?" And he goes, "Sure." Which was their way of introducing it. The fact that Hugh Jackman is 53 years old, and Fox, I think, didn't really even care about, because I don't think Fox was looking ahead to, we need to find somebody else to play this character. Mm-hmm. So when he supposedly met his demise in Logan in the year 2029, they were able to take that and go, okay, well, since that happens in 2029, Wolverine is still alive in 2023. So he's now cast and he's going to be a part of the MCU. This is kind of another one of the worst kept secrets, Jason, because they've been teasing this for like 2 or 3 years now, that Jackman, they've been having conversations with him about bringing this character over. How excited are you? And does this kind of validate my earlier comment, as I was saying that the audience is waiting to find characters that they identify with? Wolverine would be one of those.
Okay. So I think that this is cool. I'm glad they're doing it. But unpopular opinion, I'm not into Deadpool. I know people love him. I know people think it's hilarious. It's just not my humor. I appreciate Ryan Reynolds and what he does, but I've seen it. And Ryan Reynolds has obviously figured out what he can do. And so basically he just plays Deadpool in every movie he's in now, which, hey, a lot of people have done that throughout their career. He's having success with it. He's making money. I'm not getting in his pockets, but I'm just saying I've seen it. And the Deadpool stuff for me, it's just like, over and over again, how can I one up the last vulgar line that I said, the one from before? And I'm no prude. I'm just saying, it's just not my humor. And I think it's actually a little hack sometimes. But that being said, I like that people want to do new, cool things. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman obviously have a good friendship and rapport with each other off camera. The Wolverine character is one of my favorites. It was my favorite comic book growing up. I like Hugh Jackman. I thought Logan is actually maybe my favorite Marvel movie. I know it's not MCU maybe, but so I'm glad that they're doing this. but I am not in the masses of, oh, I just can't wait for more Deadpool. That's just not me.
Charles Kirkland, please cheer us up after Jason just brought us down, man.
Don't be mad. Don't be mad. I've got to say, I've got to shoot you straight. Don't be mad at me.
Don't,
Like, I'm not mad at you.
don't hate on Jason, because he's actually correct. Ryan Reynolds has been Deadpool ever since he started acting. So I mean, every movie you see him, he's playing that same person. And
In Blade, he was the same character.
It's just the same character over and over. But you know, this is just his sweet spot. It works for him. So I enjoy Deadpool. I think Deadpool 2 was maybe better than Deadpool 1. So when you get Ryan Reynolds in on Deadpool 3, I'm excited for it. Not because it's Deadpool 3, but I'm excited that Hugh Jackman is coming back to Wolverine, a role that he said he was done with. You said Wolverine died in 2029. Well, you know, if you read the comic books, death isn't always the same for everyone. So just because he died in 2029 doesn't mean he's really gone forever. So again, we have him back in this role, and it's kind of a tease as to what they're going to be doing with the X-Men as far in Marvel coming in the future coming. So this is an exciting tease for me that I maybe will get to see him play more as the X-Men get folded in to the Marvel reality.
You know, and in terms of money, this is probably a good move. Deadpool, huge success. Wolverine, Hugh Jackman is a knowable, likable character. But I think creatively, actually, and this movie may be great, and just as a standalone, it may be a lot of fun. But I think creatively, to Tim's point, the MCU really should drop everything previous to what's happened. You know, I think that they should get rid of Fox and get rid of whatever has happened, because you're always going to be beholden to those characters and those actors playing those characters. I think that seeing as how phase 4 has not been my favorite, and we're maybe a little concerned about phase 5, I actually think it would be smart for Disney to say, forget all of that. We know you love Ryan Reynolds. We know you love Hugh Jackman. And I get it. Money-wise, it makes a lot of sense. But creatively, now you're going to be stuck with, okay, so does that mean that, you know, is Halle Berry Storm, or is it, you know, so can you recast that? Is it which Fantastic Four? Those actually don't exist, but this new one that we do does. It is a little confusing. I know we've got the different timelines. I know we've got Loki. I know we've got all that happening, but it's a little convoluted if you want to move forward with doing this type of a movie, to how you connect it to all this other stuff that came before it that wasn't technically in the MCU.
No, look, I agree with you, man. I think one of my big points, Jason, and you're not here in DC with Charles and I, is that every time I watch these movies, man, I'm always sitting there, and there'll be little nuggets that'll happen in these stories, and the geeks will go, woo! And I'm like, well, what the hell's happening? What am I missing? What's going on? So there's a certain group of people who grew up reading these comic stories. Charles would be one, and I know several others. And then there are people like me who dismiss comics, not knowing that 40 years later that all of these movies would be made. And I'm like, dang it. If I would have known, I would have read all of this stuff. But I think you're right. It is a little convoluted. It is confusing. And this is probably the first time on this show that we've really had an in-depth conversation about this current phase of the MCU, and to really kind of point a finger on why we don't think it's really our favorite phase. I don't think anybody loves this phase of the MCU because you've lost so much. And, you know, I think they planned, of course, but for the loss of, you know, of Downey Jr. and Evans and a bunch of those guys. But they didn't plan for the loss of Chadwick Boseman. That one kind of knocked the wind out, because I saw that character as being huge in the next phase. And when you take Chadwick Boseman away, and we'll find out in a couple of months when Black Panther 2 comes out, they're going to address it. But will it be as popular as the first one? I don't know. I'm not trying to throw water on it before it's out. But I'm saying moving forward, not having Chadwick Boseman in the MCU is going, you got to take a hit. It's going to hurt at some point. Am I wrong?
No, I think that they were actually positioning probably him and Spider-Man to be the leaders of the Avengers. I think that that's probably where they were going.
Yeah.
And now I don't know what they do. So no, I still think Wakanda Forever is going to be a massive hit, but will it be as big as the first one? I don't know. I mean, if you look at box office and even just the fact that he got a Best Picture nomination, I mean, that's really hard to overcome. The Chadwick Boseman not being in it. I think a lot of people have their own ideas as to who should take over, whether it's the sister or I'm forgetting all the character names, so forgive me. Yeah. And so, who knows? I mean, they know what they're doing. I trust Ryan Coogler probably more than anybody, but they'll figure it out. But I don't know if it'll be as big as the first one.
Charles?
Well, we definitely know that it's going to be longer than the first one.
Oh gosh.
Well, they explained, Charles, they needed 2 hours and 41 minutes because we have to pay tribute to T'Challa. We need to expose you and show you the world of Atlantis where Namor is. And I guess they're going to show you all of this new cool stuff about Wakanda, which I guess has been redone since Thanos and his crew tore it up at the end of Endgame. So I don't know. But yeah, 2 hours and 41 minutes seems a long time for any movie in the MCU that's not Endgame. But we'll see. Charles, were you making another point, or were you done? Because I jumped in on your point.
I was just going to say, I think that Black Panther is going to be the movie of this phase. Everything else is kind of falling flat, and I think this is the one thing that we maybe have to look forward to in this phase that's going to be, actually worth watching. So we'll I mean, not saying that the others weren't worth watching, but they just didn't move us in the same way that the first phase did. And I know that what they're doing is resetting this whole thing over again. After the third phase, you want to start over, but there's just not the same momentum that they had when you had Iron Man, Captain America, and even the first Thor movie come out. So we'll see. Hopefully Black Panther can revive things for Marvel.
So Jason and Charles, I have a question for you, and this is off topic, but with Chadwick Boseman being out of the MCU now for reasons we all know, and of course there's Denai Guerrera, Letitia Wright, and what is her name? God, what is her name? 12 Years a Slave.
Lupita
Nyong'o, right?
Yeah.
So it feels to me that, and I haven't seen it, but just in the marketing of what they're doing with Black Panther 2, that it feels like it's going to be a more woman-driven story, right? Now, having said that, the fact that The Woman King just came out a couple of weeks ago, and my joke at the time when I saw the trailer before I saw the film is, man, they out Wakanda this time with this film. Will The Woman King and take the MCU part out, right? Because at the end of the day, this film is going to be much larger than what The Woman King was. But when Black Panther came out back in 2018, there was such a sense of pride in people of color who loved the representation of what they did with the story, right? Now, the fact that The Woman King literally has done the exact same thing 2 months before Black Panther 2 comes out, and you don't have a Chadwick Boseman or some male star that's going to dominate the action, are we revisiting the same thing? It feels like storytelling wise, 2 months apart. Am I wrong, or am I feeling something here, or am I just reaching?
Well, I of course have to be careful with this conversation. Your
last name is Black.
I know.
Talk, man.
I'm just joking with you, Tim. Tim remembers how we met, and that was me. Anyway,
I'm sorry. We can't tell that story on the air. But
no, although I was on the right side of it, I will say.
You were on the right side of history. Yes.
Yes, I was. Okay. Well, I'll say this. Chadwick Boseman, as much as we revere him and his memory is eternal and those sorts of things, and he played a lot of iconic characters in Jackie Robinson. I don't know that Chadwick Boseman was actually a star when Black Panther came out. In other words, I don't know that many people saw Black Panther because Chadwick Boseman was Black Panther. I mean, credit to him for playing the part and doing a good job. But I think that movie was what it was for what it represented, as you pointed out, Tim. Ryan Coogler has a good name. I mean, Michael B. Jordan, arguably a bigger star probably than Chadwick Boseman. But I don't even know that people saw it for him. I think they saw it because it was in the MCU. It was a movie people have been wanting to see. The buzz on it was good. It delivered. And so it becomes this monumental hit that, as you mentioned too, people of color have a lot of pride in and saw multiple times. That's always the trick, right? You got to see it. If you want to make a big hit, they got to see it more than once. Look at like Top Gun, for example. So moving forward, I think the star is Black Panther. The star is Wakanda. It takes a little bit of a hit because of Chadwick Boseman. However, I do think people are curious to see, well, how do they handle him dying when they weren't planning on that being part of the story? So there's that element too. And then to say about the Woman King, did we just do it? The truth is, no one saw Woman King. I mean, I think we have to call it like it is. I know that it's good, and I know that people that have seen it have enjoyed it, and it has good reviews. And I think it actually is doing decent in terms of box office, but it's not the massive runaway hit that makes people feel like we're just going to do this all over again in a couple of months. At least that's my take.
That's a good point, Charles. I agree. Go ahead.
I wanted to pull up the box office numbers for The Woman King, and to Jason's point, I don't think they aren't stellar, and so I don't think that this has been the linchpin that Black Panther was, and I think there was a convergence of a lot of things that happened with Black Panther. That first of all, that it was a Marvel film, and second of all, there was this wave of national pride or that was associated to that film. I don't think that The Woman King was ever marketed well enough to generate that kind of recognition or swell of pride that was associated with Black Panther. So it did kind of suffer in its box office numbers. However, when we come to Black Panther 2, this is again, there's just this swell again, and Jason's right. It wasn't all about Chadwick in this movie. I tend to disagree that I think Chadwick was a star, a rising star going into this film, but we don't know. No one knows how this is going to play. Whether was it Marvel, and Marvel is not doing that as well as it should be doing. So are we going to have the same kind of push that we did for the first Black Panther? I really don't think so. I think there'll be a lot of name recognition, but as far as the second, third, fourth screenings that a lot of people did back in the day, I don't see it happening for this film.
Well, I just looked up the box office numbers for The Woman King, and it's at $40 million about 11 days in. So you're absolutely right. Black Panther, of course, I think was it 700 million? 700 million domestically and like 1.3 total. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know it did 1.3 worldwide. So you're right. There are two different planes. And it's unfortunate the way that The Woman King was marketed, that that film wasn't marketed well. It's a really good film. I've seen it twice. I enjoy it. But it still feels like there's some spillover to me. But to Jason's point, and I think Charles, you concur, not enough people saw it for it to be kind of a direct competitor to Black Panther. And I knew that going in. But I have to ask these questions, man. I mean, get you guys to talk about it, so it's no problem. So I think we're good with the MCU this week. That we've all agreed that Phase 4 is kind of lacking. Whether it's for reasons I think about, listening to Jason or listening to Charles, there's some truth somewhere inside of something that one of us had said, or maybe multiple reasons on why phase 4, like for an example, you talked about the humor aspect, Jason. Is She-Hulk working for you right now on Disney Plus?
I thought the pilot was so dumb, and I was not into it. And then I binged about 4 episodes after that, and I actually kind of enjoy it. So I will say, I know it's different and the humor is different and it doesn't always land with me. But for what it is, a kind of an easy breezy TV show, I'm actually kind of enjoying it.
Charles, we talked on this show about Moon Knight, which was not one of my favorites. I looked at it, I was like, I don't get it. Is Jason, or is it just the two of us, or are you feeling that there's more more miss than hit in phase 4 of the MCU?
I guess you're coming to me because I'm a comic book guy, where I appreciated Moon Knight for what it was. I don't think it was a success. And I feel the same for She-Hulk. I appreciate it for what it is. I keep wanting more from the show, but I have to be resigned that this is not going to be one of those integral stories in the Marvel storyline that I want it to be, or that anybody thinks it should be. So you have to take it for face value. Is it a success? It depends on what you're looking for, and even in the comic books, She-Hulk was kind of a female Deadpool in that she breaks the fourth wall and she is more humor than action. But so I think they're treating her well as far as the show goes, but I don't think it's communicating to a lot of the crowd. I don't think people are loving the show.
Wow.
So.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of these week's movies. And now, Jason, did you get a chance to see Bros?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so that's good. Charles and I, neither of us saw Bros, so I'm just going to set it up and we're going to throw it to you, Jason. Bros is a romantic comedy directed by Nicholas Stoller from a screenplay he co-wrote with Billy Eichner, who also stars and executive produces. Stoller and Judd Apatow are producers on the film, which stars Luke McFarlane, Bowen Yang, Harvey Feinstein, T.S. Madison, Monica Raymond, Guillermo Diaz, Guy Branum, Amanda Bierce, and Jim Rash. It is the 4th LGBT romantic comedy by a major legacy studio and the second to have an openly LGBTQ principal cast after Fire Island. Of course, this film premiered at the Toronto International Film Fest, which I was at. I didn't get a chance to check it out there, and it's opening in theaters today. Jason, give us your feedback or your breakdown or dissecting the rom-com Bros.
Well, I love Billy Eichner. I think he's so funny. I love Billy on the Street. I feel like in another life, I'm not as funny as him, but in another life, this is like, that's my lane that I should have done. It's just run up and down the street yelling at people. And I also thought that he was, without question, he and Seth Rogen were without question the best part of the Lion King remake, which was unnecessary, but still that Pumbaa and Timon part was really funny. Wouldn't mind seeing a spinoff of that, actually. So here we've got Bros, like you said. I think we could probably say Fire Island was, I think, a direct to Hulu. So this would be the first theatrical gay rom-com with a lead. And it is funny. Obviously, I think that there are probably some cultural things within the movie that hit harder if you are actually involved in that culture. Now, I am an ally. However, I don't know all the details, and I don't even know how stuff works, to be honest with you, with some of this stuff. So there are things that I think would have probably been funnier had I been more familiar with it. But overall, Billy Eichner's a good lead. He's likable. It really is one of these, and I think they did this on purpose. It's a rom-com that is funny and has a sweet message to it, but it could be a man and a woman. It's not as if there are major differences. Of course, there are some things, again, within the culture that are, and I think that that's the right way to approach it, because you're basically saying, hey, look, it's relationships are still relationships. Romantic comedies are still romantic comedies. Forget who they actually involve. So I can appreciate that they were able to pull that off. And I would recommend it, but it's a hard R. I mean, it's something that you have to prepare yourself for.
I got
don't think you would expect anything less from a Judd Apatow film than a hard R.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing too. I mean, with Apatow being the producer of it, it's got the typical storyline that doesn't 100% add up. There are some there are some threads in it that don't necessarily connect or come back, and a lot of that's just because they let them ad lib so much on those movies. But overall, it is a good movie. It's funny.
Well, it's funny when you were saying that in the middle of your review, when you said it could have been a man and a woman, it reminded me in the early 2000s when they were making all of these Black stories, right? That were coming out, these Black comedies. You would see the brothers and all of these films. And then somebody said, hey, we can make some with the Hispanic community as well. And they created this movie called Chasing Poppy. And Chasing Poppy, I looked at it and was like, this was such a blatant ripoff. This could have been any ethnicity, but let's just make it Hispanic or Latinx. So that's what it feels like that you're saying. And until you start getting what I call more organic stories that sort of just work across the board, I don't know. I didn't see it, but I've heard from everybody who has, including you, Jason, that it's very, very funny and that I need to check it out. So it is in theaters on starting today. If you had to give it a grade, Jason, because we normally give out letter grades, what would you give Bros?
I'd probably give it a B+. I mean, it's not hysterical, but it is funny. And by the way, in reference to what you were talking about with take an African American cast or a Latinx cast, if it doesn't have a white lead, I don't see it.
Wow.
You guys, the pause was way too long with that response.
Well, no, the reason why I'm laughing because one of my dearest friends in the world is a former critic who now produces, I guess, TV and movies, Brandon Phibbs, and he literally was serious when he told me that one time. And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, you never seen Shaft?" And he was like, "Nah." Wow. So no, I know Jason is being funny. That's why I'm laughing. And you have to be around Jason. Charles, next time we have one of these junket opportunities, you need to go over and spend some time, sit at a Jason table, because Jason is hilarious. Or ride on the bus where Jason is, because there's a lot of humor and interaction, because it's all about the personality and the humor. Like you said, the pause, he just gets in, gets out, digs in. I just think it's funny.
Well done, Jason. Well done, you guys.
Well done, sir.
All right. Thanks,
All right, Jason. So up next, we're going to hit Hocus Pocus 2, a supernatural comedy directed by Ann Fletcher, written by Jen D'Angelo, and produced by Walt Disney Pictures. A sequel to the 1993 film Hocus Pocus. And as I told Jason, there was no clamor in the streets for a new Hocus Pocus. Why? I don't understand why we made this movie. But Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy, along with Doug Jones, return reprising their roles with a bunch of new casts, including one of my favorite hotties, Hannah Waddingham, from
Ted Lasso.
Thank you, from Ted Lasso. This is also released on Disney Plus today. Did anybody see Hocus Pocus 2?
Well, I think you're actually underestimating the power of Hocus Pocus. But I see Charles. Charles, did you saw the second one?
I did see the second one, yes.
All right, Charles. Well, let's hear what you have to say about Hocus Pocus 2.
Okay, first of all, Jason's right. Hocus Pocus was an incredibly fun movie. And I think there had been clamor for a sequel, maybe right after the film had finished. And this is one of those films that had been in development hell for a long time. But I was very glad to see Hocus Pocus 2. It surpassed my low expectations because I thought that after such a long time that they couldn't pull off these roles again. But everyone seemed to fall into the same characters. Even though Kathy Najimy is much older, she looks much older in this remake, sequel, I should say. But a lot of the spirit is the same. I enjoyed it a lot. The character additions were perfect. And I, like I said, if you enjoyed the first movie, you will really enjoy the second one.
Okay, so if you had to give it a letter grade, what would you give this?
I give it a B.
Wow. Okay, so let me just go back to my intro and part of what I talked to Jason about yesterday. When I said nobody was asking for Hocus Pocus 2, remember, I don't have any little people around. I didn't see the first Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus is like a blip on my cinematic radar, man. I'm sitting here watching, classic film. Hocus Pocus, it might work, for people with families. I mean, Jason, you got some little ones at home?
Yeah, I do. But Tim, you're talking about little ones. The first one came out over 20 years ago. I mean, it's not like it came out in 1993. Yeah, I mean, so I guess, so yeah, but you're acting like only 4-year-olds are watching Hocus Pocus from 93. So no, this actually is more in the wheelhouse of like my wife and her friends. Like they're the ones that love this movie. And don't forget that Freeform shows this movie on a loop on Halloween. So this is a popular movie. You're talking to 3 middle-aged males that are probably not necessarily the core demographic. So I'm with Charles. I actually, the first one, I mean, whatever. I could take it or leave it. It doesn't do anything for me. But it is one that that is on a loop in our house come Halloween time. So the second one, I actually I had fun with it. I mean, do I need to watch it again? Not necessarily, but it was fun to watch, and the follow up, the references to the first one, and the characters coming back. I mean, it was definitely good enough, and my family really enjoyed it. So I can totally see why they redid this.
All right. I mean, I can live in the minority. I'm good with that. I mean, I will do this. I will go back. I don't think I've ever watched Hocus Pocus. So when you talk about the first one came out in 1993, I will watch Hocus Pocus and Hocus Pocus 2 today because you two people who I respect have told me that maybe I'm missing something. And I'll come back next week and go, hey, man, I watched Hocus Pocus. It was actually better than I thought it was.
I'm not saying necessarily that you're missing something. I think maybe you just might be missing the cultural significance it has on certain people. So I'm not necessarily saying, Tim, what are you doing with your life? I'm just saying, be a little bit more aware of the entertainment world and pop culture. That's all I'm saying.
All right, I'll
say this. When I got notification that I had the Hocus Pocus screener, there's usually when I get a screener, there's the guys and there's the girls. So when I said I had Hocus Pocus 2 screener, the girls in the house were like, yes, let's go watch this, because it, like Jason said, it's the Christmas story of Halloween. I mean, it runs on that loop and they've watched it all the time. So they were like, yeah, we got to see this. And they had fun. They were singing and bopping along. So, it's that kind of movie.
All right. So we're going to go from having fun to, at least I know Jason's opinion on this one. And we're going to talk about this. It's time to talk about Blonde. And we're going to close with this film, which is a Netflix release, which is a biopic of Marilyn Monroe, written and directed by Andrew Dominic, based on a 2000 novel of the same name by Joyce Carol Oates. The film, of course, is a fictionalized take on the life and career of Monroe, played by Ana de Armas, who a lot of people will remember from Deep Water, which I think was earlier this year.
Mm.
The cast includes...
That's what we remember her from?
Wow. Okay. The jokes are starting already. The cast includes Adrian Brody, Bobby Cannavale, Xavier Samuel, and Julianne Nicholson. Of course, it's produced by Plan B's team of Dee Dee Gardner, Jeremy Kleiner, Tracy Landon, Brad Pitt, and Scott Robertson. And of course, this film has been getting a lot of controversy since its premiere at the Venice Film Festival this year for its casting, graphic sexual content, and becoming the first NC-17 rated film to be released via a streaming service. Let me see. I will go first on this one because I have a story to tell about Blonde, right? So I get this put in my queue. It took me 4 times to watch this movie all the way through. Like every time I kept watching it, I would see something and be so disturbed and go, damn, I gotta take a break. So that happened 4 times before I was able to get through the film. And I will say this, right? With the exception of Chloe Sevigny in the infamous Brown Bunny film, and if you haven't seen Brown Bunny, don't watch the whole film. Just Google Chloe Sevigny, Brown Bunny, and there's an act that happens in the film. I'm not going to say what that act is, but you know what I'm talking about. The fact that in Blonde, there are about 3 or 4 scenes that, I mean, she must have really, really bought into the screenplay, and she really trusted the director in order to shoot this thing in a certain way. Because we're talking about a movie, Jason and Charles, that's a 2022 film where we live in the height of sensibilities right now. And some of the stuff that they had in this screenplay that they put on film, it's a little dicey. It was a little dicey. But I also feel the same way watching this. In some ways, the performance of what was the young lady's name that played Billie Holiday in the U.S. versus Billie Holiday? What is her name? The singer.
What's her name?
Yeah, I can't remember, but there were some horrific scenes in that film as well. Did you see that, Jason?
I did, yeah. And and she's a singer, and I just can't think of her.
Something Day.
Andra Day.
Yeah, Andra Day.
Andra Day, yeah.
I mean, I think it's tough, man. These conversations, and when you're talking about having 3, as you said earlier, 3 middle-aged guys talking about this stuff, it gets a little creepy. So you got to be really careful on how you broach this stuff. But I just found it to be a very difficult take on Marilyn Monroe's life. It almost felt like he took every negative thing that had ever happened to her, amplified it on steroids, and then shot it and put it on screen. From Joe DiMaggio smacking her around to her being, it wasn't even a casting couch early in her career, but just sexual abuse. I mean, this one scene where I'm trying to remember when in the movie it is. Oh, that was, I guess, the president scene with the ratio, which was, I just thought it was a brutal watch, man. And when you're talking about watching Blonde is a movie. I mean, I appreciate your dedication. I see what you were trying to do with it. You brought into the vision that the director gave you. Blonde is a tough watch, man. And you talk about it at NC-17, it's just a tough watch. And you feel bad because not just what Marilyn Monroe went through, but what the actress portraying Marilyn Monroe is trying to bring to you, which makes you feel like you need a shower after you watch Blonde. Like, ugh, I just feel dirty. Charles, did you get a chance to see this film? Because I'm saving Jason for last, because I already know where he is with this film.
I will say, unfortunately, yes, I did watch this film. And this film hurt me on several levels because I think Ana de Armas is an incredible actress. I've seen her. To me, when I first saw her in Knock Knock with Keanu Reeves, and then her transformation into the waif in Marta Cabrera in Knives Out, and then she goes to No Time to Die. I mean, she's got a lot of range. She's incredible as an actress. And I think she's incredible in this film and what she does. However, like you said, it is so disarming and just brutal to watch. Marilyn Monroe has been one of my favorite actresses, and Some Like It Hot is like one of the top movies I've ever on my list. So I have this reverence for Marilyn Monroe, to the fact where when she was cast in this role, I was like, she's not Marilyn Monroe. I mean, because Marilyn Monroe was actually a plus size girl in comparison to Ana de Armas. But the transformation that she goes through after you watched it, it was believable that she had the wavy voice when her accent didn't sneak in. She did, I think, embody the role well. It was just that it was the tearing down of the icon of the woman that I love so much that I really did not enjoy. So, I mean, I've seen horrible stories like Precious before, and then you come out of it and you say, why did they make this film? Why am I even watching it? And that was I just felt, like you said, dirty after watching this. It just did not resonate well with me, I should say. And so I appreciate her performance, the risks that she took in this film, but it was just too much.
Jason Black.
Yeah, I mean, I know I appreciate you leaving me here for the hammer, but what can I say that you guys haven't said? I mean, this film is just terrible. I mean, it's completely joyless. Even the first 20 minutes is just, I don't want to watch a little girl get abused like that. I don't want to, and even Ana de Armas, you take this, maybe the most, America's sweetheart. I know she's Cuban, but you take this woman that stole the show in a James Bond movie, was this great lead in this Knives Out, great mystery that harkens back to older Hollywood type of, movies like that. And you just basically torture her, and then in turn torture me for 2 hours and 46 minutes. It's just terrible. There at no point was I ever going, well, I'm glad I watched it. Never.
Wow.
I was actually thinking that for a minute I was like, do I have COVID, or is this just this terrible? Is this just making me feel? Is this just making me feel as horrible as? Because I was having trouble breathing. There was different symptoms. I was sweating. I was getting different symptoms that you get when you have COVID. It turns out, no, this movie's just that bad that it'll give you COVID symptoms.
Okay, hold on a second, man. That's a first. I'm glad we got this on tape. I never heard anybody compare a movie being so bad that I had COVID. Like I felt like I had the symptoms. That's great, Jason. That's great. But I agree with you, man. You hit the nail on the head. You stole my last line. There was no joy in this movie, man. This movie grabbed you around the throat, threw you down on the ground. You were struggling for air.
Hey,
his hand
don't
on you.
Stop. Please. I don't want to relive that. Oh my God.
Oh my God, that movie, that was horrible, man. And it reminds me, it's funny, there's another movie, which I can't give you the title, that I went to a screening of a week ago, and it made me feel the exact same way. That 15 minutes into it, I was like, I think I can leave now, because I know that for the next hour and 45 minutes, this movie is going straight left. And it did. And I walked out the theater, and I think, we see a lot of these types of films during award season, right? Where you get this really heavy content, folks who are in really, really bad situations in their life. And it's all about, hey, we want to show you how much pain these characters can endure, and then we'll give them this gold trophy at the end of the cycle. You've given out the most pain. And it reminds me, because again, I know what's coming with films like The Whale, and you talked about Glass Onion, Knives Out, and some of these other films, The Fablemans that are coming down the line. And these movies are traditionally always heavy. If you don't believe me, just think back every fall of the movies that you watch that you get ready for award season. Last year, was it Power the Dog? Was that last year?
It was.
Yeah, none of these movies feel good to watch, man. I mean, we talk about them from an art standpoint, and oh my God, this performance was great. That movie was horrible, man. When I say horrible, I don't mean the story was horrible. I'm just saying that the characters that they portrayed were horrible. And it
Let,
happens.
let me
Am I
just
wrong?
interject this one point that none of us has touched on. If we watch a movie for an hour and 30 minutes of this stuff, we can kind of come out of it okay. But this movie is 2 hours and 47 minutes long of torture and abuse. It was, oh my goodness, horrible. I'm sorry. I had to let everybody know that part. I don't think we mentioned that. This thing is long and horrible to watch.
All right, well, we got about 5 minutes left, and we're gonna lose the amazing Jason Black in about 3 of those minutes. So, Jason, I just want to share a little bit about we haven't seen one another since. Were you in LA in March?
No.
Okay, so
No.
I haven't seen you since like last
November, I think.
last
October,
November, December.
Yeah.
Jason is someone who I'm glad we finally got on the show. As you can tell, Charles, I love his sense of humor. I don't get enough Jason in my interactions, but we will definitely have to have you on, Jason. We got to at least have you touching us at least a month. And when I say touching us, not literally touching us, but touching
I figured.
Yeah. I just had to clarify. Look, Jason, I had to clarify. But hey, man, I wanted to really thank you because sometimes in my head I have these ideas like I think if we put these two people together, this would work. You kind of met and exceeded what I thought you would do today on the show.
Well, with that being said, I'm never going to come back on. I'm going to leave you wanting more. I can't. If we're setting the bar that high, there's no way that I will ever come back on this. So, Tim, it's been a great time. No, I'd love to come back on. You guys are a good time to talk to.
So we got 30 seconds left. What happened to our friend that brought us together?
He's still out there. He's still causing havoc. Listen, I would say you want to have him on, but I don't think you do. And if you did, don't have Charles on because he'll never talk to you again either. So yeah.
Well, with that said,
I'm going to have to hear this story.
Oh, I'll tell it to you later on.
Yeah,
Jason, you take care, man. Enjoy your
guys.
weekend, man. And thanks for coming on, man.
All right, appreciate y'all. Talk to you
All
soon.
right, man. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Charles, we got about 2 minutes left, man. Yeah, that story is legendary. I'll definitely, I can't even tell it on the show. I have to tell you when I call you. But no, man, I think for the most part, we've got a big rainy weekend coming up. This is going to be a good weekend to hunker down and movie watch. And before I came on the show, I watched 2 films from filmmaker Bill Gunn, right? Just Google who he is. He wrote the screenplay for The Landlord, which I watched. And then I followed it up with his 1973 film, Ganja and Hess, the vampire kind of film that he made, which is really, really good, man. Watched it kind of all the way through. Will admit that Spike Lee did The Sweet Blood of Jesus. I would prefer to watch Ganja and Hess over and over than watch The Sweet Blood of Jesus. So sometimes a remake is always not a better story, but a tremendously gifted screenwriter. And he has another film, Charles, from 1969, 1970 called Stop with an exclamation point that I've been trying to find, and I've been Googling all over the place, and I can find and acknowledge that it was never released, but I can't find it to watch it. So I'll be looking for that over the weekend, as well as revisiting another film that I think we're going to do something with our film festival next year. The Spook Who Sat by the Door turns 50 in 2023. And if you've never seen The Spook Who Sat by the Door, these movies I'm talking about are revolutionary films, man. When you look at a film like The Landlord, great performances, social commentary. It's a movie that talks about gentrification 40 years before gentrification was a thing. So, a film like The Spook Who Sat by the Door, amazing movie. Another one that a lot of people have never seen, maybe never heard of. So, Charles, any closing words for you, man, in our last minute?
I just want to say farewell to Trevor Noah, who's stepping away from The Daily Show after 7 years of toiling away over there, Comedy Central. I look forward to see. He's an incredibly talented guy. He always comes up to my alma mater and does a show. So I'm looking forward to see what he's going to be doing next. I already talked about Armor Wars, which was scrapped by Marvel as a TV show and now getting to be a movie. So Don Cheadle is going to be starring in his own franchise movie for Marvel, which is great. So things are looking up, I guess. I guess right now, like you said, I'm going to hunker down for the hurricane, and hopefully my generator is working. I can watch some movies and get through this weekend.
All right, man. Well, we're 2 weeks away from Middleburg, so can't wait to see this slew of films. But it's our time of season. It's the most wonderful time of the year, man. It's not even December, man. So, Charles, on behalf of him and our guest, Jason Black, today, as we tell you guys in closing every week, please see something good at the movies. God, stay away from blind, man. Stay away from blind. Until next week, man, we'll see you guys. You guys take care and enjoy your weekend. Stay safe.